Right, so here's Aquafaba again. See, here's the can of chickpea liquid. Usually leave the can top on it, so I can use that can top to hold it in place. Could use the remote.
If you're cooking your own chickpeas,
No.
can you use the liquid? Would it work as well?
Yes.
If you're cooking your own chickpeas in a pressure cooker, the liquid works as well.
If it's this thick, yeah. It depends on how thick or thin and how much water you add to the chickpeas.
Okay.
Usually just enough to cover, and so it'll be thicken it. You could. Here, I'll use this knife. I'm going to pour off the, make believe that's the top of the can. Pour off the Aquafaba. Or the chickpea. You can use that with any, it doesn't have to be chickpea. It could be the red kidney beans, right? Any kind of liquid you're using, you're going to save that liquid. Because we're using non-salted canned beans, we can save the liquid. If we're using salted canned beans, then you don't use the liquid.
Yeah.
So in this case, then we're going to mix in the blender. We're making an Aquafaba chocolate mousse. And the recipe here is a sweet potato, cherries, and blueberries with cocoa powder. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to follow these recipes precisely. I would never follow this recipe exactly at home. I would just take whatever I had in the house. Right? I could do it with a sweet potato. If I had sweet potato cooked, I would use some. If I didn't, I wouldn't do it without the sweet potato. If I wanted to put cherries in and blackberries or blueberries and or peach, I could do it a million different ways. But of course, the nice thing about this is the cherries have a dark color like chocolate, and the darkness of the cherries. So you're adding the sweetness from the cherries and the blueberries, so you don't have to add much sweetener. So this recipe can have 3 Medjool dates in it. Doesn't need a lot of sweetener. You remember we add the dates when we add the cocoa powder, because the cocoa powder adds bitterness to it. So you really need dates in the recipe when you're adding the cocoa powder, and you don't need the dates in the recipe if you were taking a vanilla ice cream without the cocoa powder. Do I have a plunger? I do. I see it right there. I'm not going to whip the Aquafaba first? Yeah. Do I have the, oh, here, I can partially whip it, right. I can whip it. First I'll blend this a little bit before I whip the maybe I can do both at the same time, one with my right hand and one with my left hand. That was like shooting that. I'm trying to, boom, it's I hate this thing. I'd much rather have a hand one that I could really have fun with and really whip. This is like, you can't. See how it's whipping up like whipped cream? You see it's like getting to be like whipped cream? The issue here, this bowl is round like that, and it's not deep. So the whisk is only hitting a small part of the bowl. You would get it in a smaller bowl, then it would whisk it quicker because the Aquafaba would go up or higher on the whisk, not just the little bottom of the whisk. If I put the Aquafaba in something like this, and just a little bottom or something smaller, it would whip faster. It's still working though, you can see it working. Or if you had the double egg beater, and it would be more appropriate for that. Okay, I'm going to mix in the spoon here. I like a little bolognese sauce, tempeh bolognese in my Aquafaba mousse. Right, Thank you. And of course, it adds it decreases the caloric density. So now, if you just put in fruit and nuts and cocoa powder and dates, it's too calorically rich. What's nice about the whole point of using the agar and the aquafaba is it adds a fluffiness and a lightness, and of course you're diluting the calories because both aquafaba and agar have almost no calories to them, and agar has 0 calories, right? Agar is the seaweed so I'm whipping that together. Now, if I chill that in the refrigerator, it'll harden more and form more like a jello, a cocoa mousse or jello mold. Pretty good. So it's not overly sweet. So we're making chocolate desserts that are not overly sweet. They're just mildly sweet. Conventional eaters wouldn't find these delectable because they're not sweet enough for them. Right? I'm not putting stevia in, I'm not putting maple syrup, no honey, no agave nectar. It's just so it's not that sweet. But for us nutritarians, we don't like it that sweet. It's like we can enjoy it's like we can taste the flavor, and we really feel like, oh, it's nice to have a dessert. That's good for you and not that sweet. You can eat a nice sized portion of it because it's not overly sweetened. All right, let's go on to the next recipe.